Get down! Get down!
Oh! Oh, he got fucked. Oh! Oh my God, he got fucked. Oh, he's fucked.
Gotcha, bitch!
Shadows, if they've committed a crime, deport them. No questions asked, they're gone. If they've been working and are law-abiding, we should say, here are the conditions for you staying. You have to pay a stiff fine because you came here illegally. You have to pay back taxes, and you have to try to learn English, and you have to wait in line.
The Bush administration, has done nothing to control the problem that we have. We've had 5 million undocumented workers come over the borders since George Bush took office. It has become an extraordinary problem, and the reason the American people are concerned is because they are seeing their own economic position slip away. And oftentimes, employers are exploiting these undocumented workers. They're not paying the minimum wage. They're not observing worker safety laws. And so what we have to do is create a comprehensive solution to the problem. Now, I have already stated that as president, I will make sure that we finally have the kind of border security that we need. That's step number one. Step number two is to take on employers. Right now, an employer has more of a chance of getting hit by lightning than be prosecuted for hiring an undocumented worker. That has to change. They have to be held accountable.
What's going to happen is you are going to pay a significant fine. You are going to learn English. You are going to go to the back of the line so that you don't get ahead of somebody who was in Mexico City applying legally. But after you've done these things over a certain period of time, you can earn your citizenship. So that it's not something that is guaranteed or automatic. You've got to earn it, but over time, you give people an opportunity. Now, it only works, though, if you do all the pieces. I think the American people, they appreciate and believe in immigration, but they can't have a situation where you just have 500,000 people pouring over the border without any kind of mechanism to control it. So we've got to deal with that at the same time as we deal in a humane fashion with folks who have put down roots here, have become our neighbors, have become our friends. They may have children who are U.S. citizens. That's the kind of comprehensive approach that
we are a country of immigrants. We're also a country of laws. And the question is, how do we balance that appropriately? I am hopeful that we can solve this problem constructively. I think Joe is exactly right, that we want to have a situation in which those who are already here, are playing by the rules, are willing to pay a fine and go through a rigorous process, should have a pathway to legalization. And I think most Americans will support that if they have some sense that the border is also being secured. What they don't want is a situation in which there is a pathway to legalization and you've got another several hundred thousands of folks coming in every year. And that, I think, is a sensible position we should be able to arrive at.
We are a generous and welcoming people here in the United States, but those who enter the country illegally and those who employ them disrespect the rule of law, and they are showing disregard for those who are following the law. We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked, and circumventing the line of people who are waiting patiently, diligently, and lawfully to become immigrants in this country.
Real reform means stronger border security, and we can build on the progress my administration's already made, putting more boots on the southern border than at any time in our history, and reducing illegal crossings to their lowest levels in 40 years. Real reform means establishing a responsible pathway to earn citizenship, a path that includes passing a background check, paying taxes and a meaningful penalty, learning English.
There y'all go. Y'all acting like families were not separated when Obama was president. Well, Terrence, where's the proof? Obama loved the legal illegals. He didn't deport nobody. Well, here you go. Yeah, so shut up. Now, if Donald Trump would... Now, listen to this, y'all. Obama even said they need to learn English. They need to pay taxes. But Donald Trump is a racist for saying the same thing?
If you're a criminal, you'll be deported. If you plan to enter the U.S. illegally, your chances of getting caught and sent back just went up. The actions I'm taking are not only lawful, they're the kinds of actions taken by every single Republican president and every single Democratic president for the past half-century. And to those members of Congress who question my authority to make our immigration system work better, or question the wisdom of me acting where Congress has failed, I have one answer. Pass a bill.
You've got to find places quickly to put kids. You can't just dump 7-year-old kids on the streets of McAllen or El Paso. And so these facilities were erected, and that one was, I think, a large warehouse, and they put those chain link partitions up so you could segregate young women from young men, from kids from adults, until they were either released or transferred to HHS.
And is that
facility? Is it ideal? Of course not.
We must stem the flow of drugs into our border and across our borders. This bill increases by 1/3 the current level of funding for interdiction at the border, including increased funding for Coast Guard and Customs Service personnel, which I might add, over the last 6 years have been cut. We've talked about a war on drugs, and we have cut, not increased, cut the number of people we, in fact, say are supposed to be the ones at the bridge, blocking the enemy from crossing the river into our territory. This bill assists Coast Guard law enforcement teams to Navy ships to bring the Department of Defense more actively in, assigns, I should say, Coast Guard law enforcement teams to Navy ships to bring the Department of Defense more actively into the fight against drug trafficking.
Biden has pledged, Joe Biden has pledged to undo all of President Trump's immigration policies. And this weekend, he had a call with Mexico's president on opening the borders. Yeah, all of this is happening right now as new migrant caravans are forming in Honduras in anticipation of Joe Biden's inauguration and the implementation of his new policies, more lenient policies. Joining us right now, a man who just wrote about this, John Daniel Davidson, political editor at The Federalist. John, what do you think Joe Biden's immigration policies will look like? Because believe it or not, he's trying to break something that seems to have been fixed.
That's right. Joe Biden's been pretty clear that he wants to loosen President Trump's more strict immigration policies and border control policies. And that's everything from COVID-19 precautions to asylum processes to programs like Remain in Mexico that have really helped deter border crossings over the last year or so. Just talking about relaxing these restrictions, whether or not Biden actually does it, will trigger caravans. It will trigger increased numbers of people trying to get across the border, and we're already seeing that in Central America.
You report that there's less fear about the coronavirus, and with the hurricanes slamming beleaguered nations, those triangle nations, they're making their march again. And we're already seeing changes at the border?
Well, that's right. And what we're also seeing is that smuggling networks that profit off of illegal immigration, hundreds of millions of dollars a year at least, by charging Central Americans for passage north over the Rio Grande and into the United States. They are using Biden's election as a marketing tool, promising people that they will be able to get into the United States more easily now that Biden is going to be president, and that now is the time to come north. And that's why we're seeing these caravans form, and that's why we're about to see a sharp increase in illegal immigration on the southern border.
So you remember the catch and release policy. Remember, any kid could not be a child who came across the border We don't know with whom. We don't know if their parent. They can claim whatever they want.
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
This is what jumped out at us. When we saw these numbers, we were like, what is this? In 21, you see 270,000 people, goes all the way to 2.1 million in 24. These are non-citizens that are getting Social Security numbers.
More than 11,000 migrants are waiting in shelters in northern Mexico. 3,800 in Tijuana, 3,200 in Reynosa, 4,000 in Matamoros.
The border is closed. The border is secure.
People sometimes think that under the Biden administration that he was simply asleep at the switch. He wasn't asleep. No. They weren't asleep at the switch. It was a massive, large-scale program to import as many illegals as possible, ultimately to change the entire voting map of the United States and disenfranchise the American people and make it a permanent, deep blue, one-party state from which there would be no escape.
Look, if I hadn't seen this myself, I'm not sure I'd have believed it. I went through it myself and mapped it, and Elon is right. This is true. The defaults in the system from Social Security to all of the benefit programs have been set to max inclusion, max pay for these people. And
This whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
we found 1.3 million of them already on Medicaid, as an example. We've gone through, on every benefit program we went through, we found groups from this particular group of people, this 5.5 million people, in those benefit programs. And then what was really, really disturbing us was why.
As the president said, he's all about border security.
Tonight, nearly 10,000 migrants a day. That is what federal officials say they are encountering at the U.S. southern border on average. Escalates in December. U.S. officials now warning that the situation is nearing a, quote, breaking point.
I want to be very clear. Our borders are not open.
Because it's not a border crisis, it's an imperialism crisis, it's a climate crisis, it's a trade crisis. This is not a surge. These are children, and they are not insurgents, and we are not being invaded. Which
And so we actually just took a sample and looked at voter registration records. And we found people here registered to vote. In this population, yes.
And who did vote?
And we found some by sampling that actually did vote.
I will say this. The president has done more to secure the border and to deal with this issue of immigration than anybody else.
Weekend, there were more than 35,000 migrant encounters down at the southern border since the start of December. Encounters have now exceeded 250,000. That's right.
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border.
And even those who were out of step with what we are advocating, peaceful protest, did not create any violence. Nobody was shot, nobody was killed. Get it in your head. And so when martial law is called, what are you going to say? I missed the point. Don't miss the point, you all. Don't think that somehow, because they called out the National Guard, there was violence. There was no violence. I was on the street. I know. And I went from downtown detention back out into the community, talking to people what happened in Paramount, what happened in Compton, what happened in Inglewood. So, first of all, get it straight. And don't just rely on what you're being told or the few incidents that you saw.
throwing bricks at the police.
Who's funding the LA ICE riots? Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna gave a name. Neville Singham is the man funding these riots. Not a fringe conspiracy, a billion-dollar fact. Neville Roy Singham, former tech CEO, sold his company ThoughtWorks for nearly $800 million, then disappeared into Shanghai, where he now operates inside a Chinese communist propaganda ecosystem. He's not donating to charity. He's building a political influence machine. Tens of millions funneled through shell nonprofits like the People's Support Foundation into radical activist groups like the Party for Socialism and Liberation, the Answer Coalition, Code Pink, and Breakthrough News, groups tied to anti-ICE actions in LA. PSL was on the ground. They weren't random protesters. They had funding, they had infrastructure, and they had a message that mirrored Singham's pro-CCP, anti-American ideology. Meanwhile, Shirla, the respectable face of immigration advocacy, got over $34 million in taxpayer funding and worked closely with protest organizers. They're not violent, but they laid the foundation. This isn't just outrage. It's foreign influence agitation, funded by a billionaire ideologue with open ties to communist China. They're not just marching, they're maneuvering. And now we know who's bankrolling the moves. My friends, we are all anonymous. And we just pulled back the mask.
There's the American dream and the California dream. There's no Alabama dream. Eat your heart out, Texas, Tennessee, and Florida. This is California.